Okay, let's start today's deep dive with a scenario so mundane, it's almost absurd. You wake up this morning feeling the unpleasant reality of being a little, shall we say, clogged up.
A simple, natural act of self-remedy. Nothing suspicious about that.
Right. So you shuffle to the kitchen, open the fridge, and reach for that time-honored, slightly dusty bottle of prune juice. But here is the bizarre, deeply unsettling question we're tackling today. Did you know that when you reached for that sweet, dark juice, you might technically be engaging with a substance that, in the eyes of federal law, is considered a drug?
And the person who sold it to you could, in theory, be classified as selling an unapproved pharmaceutical.
Drug trafficker is a pretty heavy label for a dried fruit salesman.
But that's the ridiculous point we're getting at.
Absolutely. Our mission today is to dive deep into the bizarre legal framework that dictates what we call health in America. We're going to explore why doctors are incentivized to treat pre-diseases and how a pivotal, almost forgotten law from 1938,
The Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act.
exactly how that law basically rewrote the definition of drug, not to protect consumers, but to create and protect a medical monopoly.
To understand the whole architecture of modern medicine, you have to start right there, with the philosophy baked into that 1938 law. The argument is that conventional treatments were fundamentally designed to manage conditions, to keep you on the assembly line, not to cure them completely.
And the mechanism for this is pure semantics. It all comes down to language. If that prune juice successfully alleviates your chronic constipation, the moment a company puts a label on it claiming it affects a condition in the body.
Then the FDA legally classifies it as a drug.
So if you can prove that a food, like garlic, can lower your cholesterol and reduce the risk of a heart attack, which is true that garlic is no longer a food.
It is now, by official definition, an unapproved drug that has to go through a multi-billion-dollar process.
And this isn't really about safety, is it? We're not talking about some dangerous new chemical. We're talking about an information problem.
That's where the legal stuff gets really messy. The official definition of a drug is frighteningly broad. Anything intended for use in the cure, treatment, prevention, or mitigation of disease.
Okay, let's pause on that last word. Mitigation. That's the entire ballgame, isn't it? If something only slightly reduces the severity of a condition, it falls under the same legal umbrella as chemotherapy.
Right. It makes it functionally illegal to communicate truthful, well-researched information about basic nutrients if that information touches on health benefits.
And this immediately runs headlong into a serious First Amendment issue. It's something called prior restraint.
Exactly.
Which sounds like something out of a spy novel. What does that mean in this context?
Well, prior restraint is when the government says you cannot speak about a specific topic unless they have pre-approved every single word. Historically, under Blackstonian law, the government was forbidden from acting as a super-editor.
So you prosecute someone after they lie, not before they speak the truth.
Precisely. But here, the government is essentially saying, we don't care if your claim that vitamin D reduces X is true. You can't even say it unless we approve it.
And they only approve it if it goes through their incredibly expensive drug approval process.
They restrain the speech before it even happens. Think about it like this.
Yeah.
You're trying to walk into a grocery store, a temple of nutrition, right?
Yeah, okay.
But there are huge blackout stickers over every single food item that has a proven health benefit.
So the information is true, but you as a consumer are deprived of that crucial information right at the point of sale. You're forced to buy blindly. You can't have a label that says, this salmon oil has X component and studies show it reduces chronic inflammation.
Because that's a drug claim. And if you look at why this is enforced, it all comes down to industry protection. Pharma drugs have been granted the longest patent life of almost any industry. And who acts as the police protecting those patents?
The federal government, the FDA. Wait, I'm genuinely confused by that. If I invent a new mousetrap, I get a patent. But if someone copies my design, I have to sue them.
Right.
But with drugs, you're saying the government is essentially doing the patrolling for them.
That's the operational effect. By classifying any competitive information, even truthful info about a natural compound that solves the same problem as an illegal drug claim, they eliminate competition instantly. It's an enforcement mechanism that guarantees market dominance.
Wow, that's an incredible regulatory moat. And that brings us perfectly to the second big idea, the disease inflation economy.
When you have an industry with market protection that robust, what's the logical next step? You expand the market.
And the market is defined by disease. The clinical definition of disease is just any abnormal mental or body condition.
Okay, prepare yourself for the scale of this. In the year 1900, Recognized medical science knew of fewer than 200 distinct diseases.
And today,
Today we are tracking over 17,000.
17,000. That's a compounding interest rate of medical conditions. We've managed to turn the normal variability of the human experience into a condition that requires management.
It's the pathologizing of normal life. We're not just talking about severe physical illness here.
Right. Think about mental health. You experience deep, painful grief after losing a loved one. That's not normal sadness anymore. That's adjustment disorder.
If you're shy in social settings, it's not just a personality trait. It's social anxiety disorder.
The normal stress you feel before a big presentation, where your hands are sweaty and your heart is racing, I've had this. That can be classified as performance disorder.
It turns anxiety, an evolutionarily beneficial signal, into a thing to be medicated.
And the business model doesn't even require you to be sick to be a patient. We've created an entire parallel economy around treating risk factors as if they were full-blown diseases.
This is the era of pre-disease. High cholesterol is a great example. It's a risk factor. It is not itself a disease, yet it is aggressively medicated.
Or pre-diabetes. You don't have diabetes yet, but you are categorized, given a name, and often put on a track of management that may never end.
That is the genius of the economic model. You go from being a healthy person with a slightly elevated number on a lab test to a patient for life. It expands the industry by giving it a captive audience that never ages out of the management system.
The entire expansion of disease awareness is modeled perfectly to fuel the machine. The goal isn't just to treat a symptom, but to create awareness about all the diseases that could be out there.
Making management seem like the only proactive choice.
Okay, that brings us to the most dramatic section of this whole thing. If the system is designed for management, let's look at the incredible irony of what it is actively suppressing. The proven power of natural remedies.
Well, first, we have to acknowledge the historical irony. Anywhere from 40 to 70% of all current pharmaceutical drugs originally came from nature, from plants, microbes, marine life.
We strip mine nature for cures, and now those same natural remedies are often dismissed as, folklore or quackery.
And it's not folklore. There are head-to-head, gold standard, randomized control studies comparing these simple, natural compounds against some of the most popular medications on the market.
And what stands out across the board is that the natural option tends to be better at efficacy and drastically lower on side effects.
Let's start with one of the most common conditions, depression. We're comparing St. John's wort versus the class of drugs known as SSRIs.
The SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Yep, they're designed to manage depression. The study showed St. John's wort achieved a 70% effective result for moderate depression. The SSRI drug, only 60%.
And the side effects are just massive. SSRIs are notorious for causing sexual dysfunction, weight gain, emotional blunting. St. John's wort gave better results without that devastating package of side effects. That alone is a massive data point most people will never see.
Okay, what about type 2 diabetes? Let's compare berberine, a compound found in plants, against the common drug metformin.
And berberine worked better. It reduced A1C, that's your 3-month average of blood sugar, by 12% versus 11% for metformin.
And a 1% difference might seem small, but in clinical trials, that's a really significant marker. Berberine got a better result with way fewer gastrointestinal side effects than metformin.
Okay, think about the anxiety market. For generalized anxiety, lavender oil was tested against lorazepam, which is a powerful benzodiazepine drug.
The lavender oil reduced anxiety scores by 16 points. The drug only managed 14 points. And the oil had about a fifth of the side effects.
We are talking about a common household item, an essential oil, outperforming a scheduled prescription drug in a clinical setting.
And it keeps going. For Crohn's disease, that's a serious, painful inflammation in the digestive tract. Wormwood showed an 80% remission rate.
Compared to what for the standard drug?
Only 65% for the pharmaceutical mesalazine. The data is screamingly clear. In these head-to-head comparisons, the natural, unpatented option is frequently superior or comparable, with a far better safety profile.
But here's the legal wall we keep hitting. Even with all these studies, the law forbids making these claims. The government says, if it treats a disease, it's a drug. And since these can't be patented, they exist in nature, no company can justify the multi-billion-dollar process for FDA approval.
So they just remain legally silent.
Which brings us to a crucial point about the difference between the two approaches. The patchwork mechanism versus looking at the root cause.
Let's use an analogy to simplify the biochemistry, because this is where the system gets its long-term customers.
Okay.
Imagine your body is a sprawling, high-tech factory. It has thousands of massive assembly lines. These are your biochemical pathways.
Right, converting raw materials into fuel and hormones and all that.
Exactly. Most drugs, by design, inhibit just one tiny enzyme in that entire system. They are stopping one specific gear from turning in a massive, complex machine.
Okay, let's apply this to a specific, highly relatable example, the drug finasteride, used for both pattern hair loss and an enlarged prostate.
The problem you're treating is an excess of DHT, or dihydrotestosterone. It's a very powerful form of testosterone. Too much of it causes hair follicles to shrink and the prostate to swell.
So, the drug finasteride has one job. It inhibits the enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. This enzyme is the switch that converts regular testosterone into the more potent DHT.
So by blocking that specific gear, you stop the production of excess DHT.
On the surface, that sounds like a smart, targeted solution. But here's the critical question. Is blocking that one tiny enzyme fixing the real underlying reason why the body was producing too much DHT to begin with?
No, because 5-alpha reductase doesn't just make DHT, it's involved in other processes. If you completely jam that specific gear, it's going to cause problems elsewhere.
You're not fixing the problem, you're just forcing the factory to detour around a blockade.
Yeah.
This is why people typically never come off the medication. If it fixed the fundamental imbalance, you'd stop taking it.
Instead, you just manage the symptom for life. And this forced aggressive blocking leads directly to some of the most devastating side effects.
With finasteride, that can lead to post-finasteride syndrome. We're talking about severe, sometimes permanent, issues like atrophy of the penis, persistent erectile dysfunction, and the total loss of sexual pleasure.
All of that from the aggressive nature of blocking one critical enzyme.
It seems like every single condition we treat has a root cause, but that root cause is so often ignored. Why? Because if the root cause were known and addressed, the massive symptom management market would just evaporate.
So let's ask the key question that is rarely asked in a standard doctor's office. Regarding high DHT, why was it high in the first place?
What are the actual underlying drivers?
We can list 4 main culprits. Number 1, and the most common, is insulin resistance. High insulin, caused by high carbs, frequent eating, and processed foods, directly raises the androgens that lead to excess DHT.
So a lifestyle and dietary issue is being treated with a pharmaceutical that carries severe sexual side effects. That's a massive misalignment.
It is. Other drivers include high levels of chronic stress, which increases cortisol and throws the whole hormonal system out of balance. Also, liver problems. The liver is the main organ that regulates hormones. And maybe the easiest fix: low zinc levels.
Zinc?
Zinc is a natural 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. It helps control DHT, and many people are critically deficient.
So the standard medical practice treats the symptom pathway, the conversion switch, and completely omits the lifestyle and root cause discussion because their hands are tied. The natural solutions are classified as unapproved drugs if they dare make a health claim.
The core conflict remains. The law fundamentally defines natural health remedies as competition to be suppressed. This leads to massive information asymmetry. You're deprived of preventative knowledge that could save you from needing that complex drug in the first place.
It is an ongoing legal fight challenging the FDA's rules as unconstitutional prior restraint on truthful speech. If that challenge were successful, the market would be completely transformed. Truthful information would deluge the public.
That information flowing freely would fundamentally change preventative medicine. It would increase public longevity and save lives. But for now, you are left navigating a system where your health decisions are dictated by heavily policed information.
So here is the thought we leave you with the next time you find yourself standing in front of the fridge.
If simply regulating the information we can hear can create an entire industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars, how much of your health today is genuinely driven by medical necessity, and how much is driven purely by what the law allows you to know?